All right, we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Working Towards Black. Working Towards Black is, and I decided to read it this week. I live between so many worlds, but none more complicated and beautiful and painful than the diaspora and the continent of Africa. There's such a deep spiritual connection and simultaneously such a painful disconnection. Both sides carry the burden of memory and that leaves us bound yet fractured by the pain of our experience um, with the world and each other. The spirit world has called for some of us to bridge this, to be a solve and a facilitator, and Working Towards Black is this conversation series to be able to bridge these gaps between the diaspora within itself, which is what we have today, and the diaspora and the continent. Today I have Chef Omar Robertson. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
And I
you
want to
so much.
read his amazing resume. So, Chef Omar Robinson is an executive chef and the owner of Infusion Catering Services, one of Barbados's most ambitious culinary companies. He is a graduate of La Cordon Bleu in Paris and Ottawa Culinary Institute and the Stratford Chef School, where he furthered his culinary and management training. He uses his West Indian background to create gastronomically whimsical twists of classical dishes and flavors. And now I'm going to kill you for making me have to read that with all of those words. And hopefully I got them all right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Oh no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. We go back forever, so it's an honor to be here. I know you've been from the time you came to me and told me what you wanted to do with T Barnes Global, and I've been watching you build it just relentlessly. So I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be a part of it, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Look, I mean, this conversation is so exciting to me. I'm really interested in this Caribbean perspective because I think that it's such a middle ground. I always think about the Caribbean as the middle space, right? Because there is such a different experience growing up in the Caribbean in a Black nation with the deep connections and rootedness to Africa. I think we share some of the same disconnects with the continent. I think we share some of the same issues of colonialism and enslavement, and but yet there's something so specifically Caribbean and different about your experience there. And so I always like to start off with kind of thinking about what was it like when you were a kid? Like, as you're a young Caribbean man, what is the world telling you? What is your family telling you about Blackness, about Africanness?
Um, oh, this is interesting because um, so I was born in Barbados, but my mom is from Guyana, my dad is from St. Vincent, so I'm only a born Bajan. I wasn't raised necessarily Bajan. And then on top of that, both of my parents had the privilege to study, um, do their studies or part of their studies overseas in America or Canada. So their experience there, especially when they were in university during the 70s, very much lent to what I was told and how I was raised. That was to a certain extent different from the average traditional Bajan. Um, you're absolutely right when you talk about this disconnect that happens within the diaspora, and to a certain extent, the Caribbean is the middle ground, but then to a certain extent, the Caribbean is also kind of ground zero because slavery started here. Like they brought the slaves from Africa. Barbados was their first stop. Um, so many things, but the slavery in Barbados has was the evil of slavery, the machinations of slavery, even the concept of whiteness and the concept of white versus black, all that was created here. And it's funny because, with the protests that started in the US ever since George Floyd was murdered, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, um, it sparked a movement around the world, not even here in Barbados, where we felt like while we may not necessarily have the same issues that blacks in North America have or blacks in Canada may have, we ourselves do have our own issues, and we felt like we need to address them. And so that started a whole bunch of conversations locally at a local level about race relations, what race and stuff is like in Barbados, and there's a lot of history and digging up was done. So, when I say like the concept of whiteness was created here, it was, literally a way of, after they freed the indentured Irish and Scottish, that's how they decided to separate them from black by making them white. And it kind of went from there. So as far as how I was raised, I was raised to believe like, I'm black and I'm proud. I'm like, I come
I know
from
your
a life.
parents.
Yeah, my parents. Like, I was raised to be like, I am black and I am black and I am proud. You be proud of being a black man. Like you come from a line of people that has done X, Y, Z. So so I was privileged to grow up in that. I will never forget, like, I was 5 years old and my mom and dad woke my sister up dead early in the morning to go and see Nelson Mandela get freed from prison on television. So like I said, it's very much, so for me, that's how I was raised. What I found in my experience here has been that, even though we are a majority black country, we still are segregated to a certain extent, mostly along economic lines, where the white majority, who for the most part tend to be descendants of the plantation class, or foreign plantation owners, etc., tend to have more control over the economy than blacks do. And that has its own repercussions and its own impact here. And that's one of the things I got raised about here. So it's interesting. So to a certain extent, yeah, being raised here in a majority black country, you don't really feel racism shows itself in other ways. Racism shows itself from colorism, classism, from that point of view, less so much about race. Racism more exists from what my mother calls, she heard from a friend of hers, voluntary apartheid. That's the best way to describe kind of what happens in Barbados here. It's a voluntary apartheid. It doesn't mean that there's not good relations. I find, like, what I found, that said, I find that race issues tend to be more, and racial divisions tend to be more, in the sense, it tends to be stronger at the older generation and tend to dissipate towards the younger generation. So that's what I've been finding. So things are changing here as far as that regard. But yeah, I mean, we've had passionate debates here. We're in this huge debate right now about taking down the statue of Horatio Nelson, Admiral Horatio Nelson, that's standing in our Hero Square, and everyone's kind of like, why do we have a statue of a former admiral for the British that basically believed in colonialism, that fought and died for colonialism, that hated William Wilberforce, in our Hero Square, when we're celebrating Bussa, the man who led the first slave revolt, and the people who led us into independence, and people who led us into, all these other things. So, that was a huge debate that started that. So they've been agreed that they're going to take the statue down.
Oh, they agreed that they're going to take it down.
Yeah, it's taking a while. Friends of mine are getting restless. So, if it ends up in the harbor, it ends up in the harbor. That's all I'm saying.
We didn't say that on this stuff. We don't know who it is.
We don't know who it is, but yeah.
So, Barbados is, I've studied in Barbados. I went to UWI for the summer. I did, I've spent now a lot of time in Barbados, and I always find the Caribbean across the board really fascinating. Barbados in particular has like this, it's a texture to it, and that's like the only way I can think about it. There's that ongoing joke in the Caribbean, like, They dropped the Bajans off there because they were the most compliant slaves, and they took all the other ones to Jamaica because they were the rebellious ones. And then you look at like the history of Barbados and the history of rebellion, and there's like one major slave revolt.
Yeah.
And I know people argue that no, there were other, I mean, I know that slaves rebelled in all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of ways, but actual physical revolt, there's one,
Yeah.
comparative to like a Jamaica that has several, right?
Oh
And so,
yeah. No,
I,
I'm not just several. I'm not just Jamaica that had several, but in Jamaica, which actually had like a runaway slave population, the Maroons up in
yeah.
Coptic country and in the mountain, the Blue Mountains, like you know. So like it was more than just like they had revolutions. They actually had communities of runaway slaves that fended for themselves, that the
Mm.
Red Coats were deadly afraid of. Like, yeah.
So does Bayesian culture, and we're gonna get in trouble either way we go with this, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it a compliant society? If it is, why? And if it isn't, why are the reasons why you resist that idea?
Um, we are we are compliant to a certain extent. We're compliant to a certain extent. What I would say is, um, how should I say the phrase? What I have found is that we will we will quietly complain about stuff. We won't, always get up and march and protest openly. Like I can tell you, like the protests that happened, the Black Lives Matter protests that happened here were a huge change of pace from what normally happens here. Normally, we're not
I was so
marching through
proud
the
of
streets.
y'all. I was like, look at y'all over there revolting.
Yeah, like that's definitely not normal for Barbados, but it's definitely needed. Like I said, I think Bajans tend to more, mumble quietly, um, and then when they have the opportunity to find ways to exact um, their power, they will. So, um, elections, yeah, like that's how we got the government we have now. Like the government we have now basically won every seat in parliament because people were so fed up with the last administration. Like, and
I'm
I
proud of
myself,
this new government. I'm
I
excited about
myself,
this new government.
we're excited too. We're excited too. Like, no lie. We have our concerns here and there, but it's definitely a huge change of pace in the previous administration. Like the fact that we even have a government that actually regularly communicates with us. The fact that we have a prime minister who is so social media savvy and like you'll be on your phone, you'll be at home chilling, and you'll be Mia Motley's going live on Instagram, and she'll be covering a press conference that she's doing somewhere or a speech that she's giving somewhere or something, whether it's a state funeral or her visiting the sewage plant that's under renovation or whatever, like touring the island before there's a storm coming. She's out there doing these things and she's making forth trying to find ways to communicate with the people and so that the people always know what's going on as quickly as possible or if not in real time. Um, so that in itself has made a huge difference in terms of at least how people feel about their government. They feel like there's an open line of communication. They feel like we talk about them that way. But but we but yeah, but like I said, so like in the last election, like I myself I didn't expect it to be that bad. Like I expected maybe two or three people to hold on to their seats. And like when we say landslide, I mean like all 30 seats went to the Barbados Labour Party. It was complete. And so that's how that tends to be how the average Barbadian finds a way to work. When they find a way to be able to
They
exercise
do it
their power.
through systems,
Yeah.
like very system oriented, which I mean, and how do we account for that? Like, what do you think makes this energy, so different in Barbados? What is it, the church culture? Because I actually did some research. I used to think that Barbados had the most amount of churches in the Caribbean per square foot, I think in the world, but it was actually Jamaica. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting how so is it religion? Is it Christianity? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Um,
also Barbados had a very violent very, very violent enslavement, you
Yeah,
know.
well, that's it. Honestly, like in having these, so some friends of mine and I started doing a series of Zoom call discussions that were turning into a podcast. We actually took a break. We're starting back, um, called Breaking Barriers BIM. And the basic idea was to have conversations to try and break down the racial barriers that exist. So that's where the concept came from. And in it, we had a psychologist, Janelle Chase Mayers, come on and talk to us about generational trauma and post-traumatic slave disorder and post-traumatic slave syndrome, understanding how generational trauma carries through to this day. And that was very enlightening for us. So, and it really helped a lot of us to have a better understanding as to why Barbados is the way it is. And yeah, a lot of it has to do with slavery. It comes down to because slavery here was so brutal. I mean, like she was showing us some YouTube videos from very interesting people, and one of them was saying like when she was reading an account of what slavery was like in Barbados, she was like reading accounts of how slaves worked until the muscle detached from the bone.
Mm-hmm.
How they were treated, how many slaves died. Like basically, it's like the West Indies the West Indies imported more slaves per capita than any other place, than Brazil, than for other Portuguese nations, than America.
Really?
Yeah, per
Then
capita, like
Brazil? I thought Brazil had the largest
the
population.
largest population. But if you do it on a per capita basis, based on size of country and stuff, it's actually higher because
That makes
even
sense.
though because slaves are so ill treated here within the West Indies that
They
slaves
died.
they died. They had to import new slaves. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
within America, they imported a set amount of slaves and they just reproduced and let them breed and reproduce and procreate, and that's how they built their slave population in America. Um, but Barbados, yeah, Barbados. So a lot of what we do here tends to what we've learned to realize tends to come from slavery. The it was interesting. There's a perfect example that she brought up of you know a mother comes to you, someone comes to you and says, "Hey, is that your child?" Says, "Yeah, he's a really smart kid. He's really well behaved. He's really this. He's really that. You should be really proud of him." And the automatic reaction from the mother, even though it's not, she doesn't think it, is like, "Oh, thank you so much." But he's still giving me some trouble sometimes. We always find a way to kind of detract from what the person says. And
Mm-hmm.
what we do, and what Janelle was explaining to us is that goes back to not just slavery, but post-slavery in kind of plantation, where basically the plantation owner would write up and like tap a young girl, and that'd be like he wants her to come to bed, or would be like your son looking real good and strong, nah, but he real stupid, he real thing, anything to keep them from taking their son and potentially selling him or raping her or whatever. And so a lot of what we do here kind of has start transcends through, even though we don't really understand the root. So
Mm-hmm.
just sitting down and doing your work, being at work, doing your job, not really shining, not really standing out. You don't want to do that because stand out, and you don't. It's only now that we're only now connecting dots and understanding how that works, right?
That's fascinating. So let's talk about, because I mean, we're talking about government, and I know you guys have in Barbados these really interesting new connections with Ghana. And I was excited to see some of the idea of import export and Barbados being used as a port system between, Barbados and Ghana, and I think other African nations are getting more interested. How do
Mm-hmm.
you what do you account, and how is the community responding to these new connections? Like, are is there this sense of we are African people and this connection makes sense? Is there this overall idea that like, yeah, I could be in Africa? Or, I think oftentimes Caribbean people become very nationalist. And because they're already living in a Black nation, the idea of like the migration to Africa isn't necessarily on their main agenda.
Yeah, I would say that to a certain extent. I would definitely say to a certain extent. I mean, like I'm a big fan of us continuing to forge these relationships with Ghana and other African nations. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's incredibly important for us from a trade point of view. I think it's important from a cultural point of view, from a historical point of view. I think it's very important for us to have to build these connections, to build these bonds. Yeah, we in Barbados, China, and the West Indies and Caribbean tend to be very nationalistic. Um, a lot of it comes down in Barbados. A lot of it comes down to because we never really had a um, Black Power, pro-Black movement. Not like they did in other countries and other islands. So much so, like there was a point in time where if you were caught with pro-Black, Black Power literature in your suitcase coming in, customs were complicated. So we never really had that awakening. Like we were talking about the same thing in our group chat. We were talking about it and saying like, there's a point in time where, if you were Pan African, it was something that we kind of used to make fun of.
Mm-hmm.
That has since changed where, as we've become more conscious and stuff, we become more in touch with our African roots, our African culture, African history. And I think that's what really laid the foundation for this government to go out and make the connections that they had. Whereas, like, now, like, schools have, have, recognize African, you have African Appreciation Month, and, they have Africa Day where kids will dress up in various clothing, depending on what they want. People do their makeup, stuff like that in various ways. So, it's one of those things where people are, and I think it's becoming now, I think, the beauty of stuff like Afropunk has really kind of made it comfortable for people to start being able to embrace that side of, and embrace their roots more in a time when before, where we didn't really feel it in the same way. But that being said, I mean, like, we've, ironically, some of the cases that we got, recent cases that we got, were actually for a group of nurses from Ghana that came in to work at the QEH. So they had tested positive. So they're, I think, I'm not sure if they're still in quarantine or not, but they were quarantined and were being treated and stuff for it. So but that was the first phase of this ongoing relationship between the two of us. And
did that create a certain level of xenophobia? Did that generate conversation? I know, I just think in the Caribbean in general, when you're on small islands, it's not difficult for xenophobia to kind of kick in,
yeah,
when you're in a very nationalist space.
There was some xenophobia, but there was, oddly enough, there were a lot more people who were open to the idea and welcome to it, which is why I say, like, I know things are changing. And people are being more open to it. And then I mean, like, in the year 2020 that we live in, COVID. I think I think one of the things that we've really learned to appreciate is that, I think it's really pointed a lot of vulnerabilities for us here in Barbados. I think it taught us that we cannot depend on tourism in the way that we can't be such a heavy tourism-based economy. We can't continue to depend on America, North America, England for trade, for imports and stuff like that. It's important of us to, one, look within ourselves, within the region, but also outside of the region and forge new partners and partnerships. So, making these relationships with Africa is smart, it's strategic. I mean,
yeah, I think one of the things that's been most interesting as I've spent, probably the last decade in the Caribbean, as an outsider, but kind of like as an adopted Caribbean person too. People kind of accept me everywhere I go, which is nice. But also experiencing, just experiencing what's needed, right? And you can always kind of see from the outside looking in. And I've always thought that this dependence on tourism in the Caribbean created the new wave of colonialism, the new wave of slavery, because you're really dependent on the whim of white tourists, especially if you believe, I mean, and it's always so fascinating to me because Caribbean people are very kind of reluctant about Black American tourism. And it comes with its things, right? But Black Americans spend $60 billion in the market, where we were actually spent the most amount of money in the tourism market last year. But because we're still in the Caribbean so white focused that
Mm,
those, those the kind of whims of whiteness still kind of it restricts you, like you I call it like the new slavery. And if all you have to depend on are
yeah.
white tourists coming in, you're still really kind of under the weight of whatever their whims are, whatever it is they believe you should be saying, shouldn't be saying. And I always wonder how somebody, especially like you, that really depends, on culture and tourism and,
Mm-hmm.
people having activities. How can we rethink this? How are you rethinking this?
Well, I mean, like personally, I think that right now we just need to try. I think that trying to bring cases people in from the regular places we come into who all have either high numbers of cases like y'all do in the States or who are starting to see spikes pick back up like in Europe. I think like doing stuff like that is while yes, because we have this idea that this is where the money is. I still think to a certain extent that for the time being, at least, we need to very much look kind of within and be more regionally focused.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would personally love to see like a regional travel bubble set up and have like all the all the travel taxes, departure taxes that make traveling within the island as expensive as it is removed, and just kind of encourage people to travel throughout the region. Like it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be as much money as we normally make, but it's something, and
Or it
go
could
from
be.
there.
I
But it
think
could be
that
something.
that's the real interesting space. We don't know what a Black oriented business or Caribbean oriented, which, could mean a lot of things depending on what nations you go after. What
Mm-hmm.
is your hope for young Bayesian Black people as you move forward into this new identity? What is your biggest and grandest hope for you guys?
Um, my biggest and grandest hope for Black Bajans. Um, my biggest and greatest hope for Black Bajans is basically just the ability to fully compete on the same level as white Asians in Barbados on the economic level with no hindrances, no impediments. I would like to be able to start seeing us really recognize our greatness, not embrace necessarily so much tourism, but recognize that there are other areas that we can develop, that we should be developing. I mean, like Barbados was doing stuff with solar water heater was invented here. I think the solar oven, one of the first solar ovens was invented here. We were doing stuff with solar long before like everyone else in the world was doing it. We've always been punching ahead above our weight. That's what we like to say here in Barbados. In Barbados, we punch above our weight. In this region, we punch above our weight. Um, and it's true. And I really, my dream, my wish is that that we fully learn to have the confidence to punch above our weight, that we don't need to bring in experts from America or Canada or stuff all the time to tell us what it is that we need to do. We have that expertise there. I wish that we would start to embrace the more embrace what the current economic trends are, business trends are. Like for example, government has a bill on its desk to um, legalize marijuana for medical purposes and legalize a medical marijuana industry. I think that they should just go full legalization. Start with decriminalization, go full legalization. I think that we should really go all in and make that a potential industry in addition with tourism, in addition with some other stuff, and try and make it that way. Because and I personally believe like that should be used as this great economic leveler, where you know in Barbados we've been locking kids up for a year, 2 years for a slip, for a J, for 5, 10 grams of weed. Like it's just ridiculous. Like I would love to be able to see all those kids get their records expunged, and I'd be able to see them be able to have a chance to play a role in a legalized marijuana industry, to run a dispensary, to help run a grow operation, to help be a part of it. Like I think like that's what I see. Because if you do that, then now you're now employing and empowering a whole new generation of young Black men, young Black women, allowing them
Mhm.
to develop wealth, generate wealth, own land, and everything changes. So basically, you're taking a whole new section of people out of one class and bringing them into another class. And I think that that's
Yes.
incredibly important for us as our development. I think that that's kind of like the biggest mission.
And I like the work that you're doing, and I want to make sure we talk about it. Just, what you're doing with Infusion Catering, what you're doing with Concept Eclectic. A lot of it is about, exposing young Bayesian artists to the world and being able to create these events that are inter-Bayesian. Tell me a little bit about that kind of work and
Yeah,
what
I
it
mean,
means
like,
to you.
yeah, I mean, like, all right, with my company, my catering company, Infusion Catering, like, I started it because I started when I moved out here because basically I realized like a lot of catering in Barbados is the same, and I kind of wanted to do something different, and I had a lot of great influences from family friends, um, who really encouraged me to um, be more locally focused. So like this is like at the very beginning of when people started focusing more on local farms. So that the idea of farm to table just started. Um, these are all very new concepts, but this is something that they had been telling me from the time I started studying at Cordon Bleu. Um, you know, when you come back, take everything you learned there, but find a way to use that with stuff that we grow here. So when you started my company, that was very much what it was. It was very much how can I take the techniques I learned, the classical French train, but how can I take that and apply it to a sweet potato, a breadfruit, a yam, fish cake, whatever. And so that's what I strove to do. That's how I started the company. And, we developed a really good reputation for doing that, being very innovative, very playful, very whimsical with our food. Um, I believe in, a lot of my dishes have names that are inspired by something that's happened in my childhood or just a fond memory I have around a particular ingredient or a particular dish and why I've created it. Yeah, so sometimes I just feel like having fun with the name. So that's kind of like so for me, from a catering point of view, that's how I started the company. That's what I believe in. I'm a member of the Slow Food Barbados and Slow Food Chef Association, Chef Alliance. Um, a lot of what we do, myself and a lot of other chefs do, we very much try to have a strong local statement in our food, in our products that we use, in our even when possible, even in whatever equipment we can use. Like, if I have someone here that's making like these great placemats, I'm gonna go to them and I'm gonna buy all my placemats from them that I use for catering for jobs and stuff, and that's what I've
Mhm.
done. So trying to find ways to do that.
I mean,
Um,
it's food is interesting, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. Food is interesting because, especially Caribbean food, is so rooted in Africa. Like, there's
yeah.
just so many parallels. Are we
Mm.
having I mean, and I think people know that. Do you feel like that conversation within the Caribbean, or particularly within Barbados, is really happening? Like, where people are able to see these connections and start to get more in touch with them or feel more comfortable with them?
Yes, to a certain extent, no to a certain extent. Yes, it there's an understanding of that the roots and stuff are the same in terms of where certain dishes come from and why we do them, how they very much are similar to traditional African dishes. But I don't think that we've really done from a food anthropological point of view. I don't think we've really dug into that as much as I think we should or we could. But it's definitely something that, whenever I find time, I definitely like to do because I think
Hmm.
it's important. I think it's very important to start being able to start connecting these things because it's like just something as simple as you know we turn up on grits, corn grits, cuckoo here in
All the
Barbados.
same. Hmm.
Same thing, but I mean different. Granted, grits are a bigger piece of corn and stuff, but the cookie process, the idea, the concept, incredibly similar. And we
Hmm.
have so many dishes like that that we have sauce, and I think it's important for us to really start to understand, how these connections exist and to actually work on really building these bridges and reinforcing these bridges. I think it's important, and I think it's something that we need to start doing. But yeah, food is one of these, fascinating, beautiful things
It's
that,
the
like,
connector. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the
yeah.
grand connector. So is blackness, because this show really, what I hope is that I think that we're working towards blackness. I think this identity um is something that we have not reached yet. I think America has a very particular lived experience that requires, because we're 13% of a population, and we are um on some level the minority, right? Which is very different from like a Caribbean or very
Right.
different from Africa. So does blackness mean something different in a Caribbean construct than it means, in general?
Um,
Is the necessity the same?
um, I would say is the necessity the same? I wouldn't necessarily look at it from a necessity point of view, but I would say that yeah, blackness is now the same. I think that there has been a understanding of how well, I mean, for us, we've always known, but I think there's now an understanding of how, you know, how much how much the Caribbean has had an impact on Black America, how much the Black America has had an impact on the Caribbean. And I think it's very much undeniable undeniable that connection. And so once you understand how that connection exists, then basically you understand how blackness is the same thing as one.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I mean, like Shirley Chisholm, Bayesian,
I mean, we
Dougie
there
Fresh, Grandmaster Flash. Like, there's so many.
I think that it's an interesting and actual timely conversation because of, Kamala Harris, right? I think that all of the debate around blackness and if somebody is black or not black based on their Caribbean heritage, which is insane, and their connection to slavery, it just really shows that even those people like us will say, yeah, absolutely, this is an undeniable fact, that there are these connections and intersections and crosses, because we know that the slave trade went across borders all the time. Punishment was often getting shipped to Jamaica, from Charleston or from other places. We know the connections between those, but many of us are undereducated around what those intersections are. And I think it complicates the situation, because then people looking and searching for this joint identity is sometimes not always there. What
Yeah.
did you think about this debate and this kind of backlash?
I I was I was really frank about it on Twitter. I was like, okay, if this is what y'all want to do, we can do this, but we're taking everyone back. So we're taking Biggie, we're taking Colin Powell, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Shirley Tilson. We're taking everyone back. Like, y'all don't get to, like, if it's what you want to do, go ahead. But
I mean, we're not left with nobody. I mean, let's just
no,
be real.
you're not left with
I'm
nobody.
just,
You're not left
I'm
with
just
nobody. But I mean,
playing.
like, no, I mean, no, but I mean, like, Malcolm X's mother's Grenadian. Like,
Yeah.
Marcus,
Not
Marcus, Marcus Garvey, Jamaican.
But the reality is, when you go back, you don't
Mm-hmm.
know where, like, you have people that were constantly crossing borders, going like this was a fluid system. And there's no purity in enslavement.
I
Right.
mean, like, even the joke about how Kamala Harris's great grandfather or great 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 grandfather was a slave owner of this name, and everyone's kind of like,
And you're like, you do know that slaves were raped, right? Like that's like what was happening to all of us, right?
I'm, I'm like, oh, word. So you think you're 100% black?
Yeah.
You really think you're 100% black? Do you know how this works?
And the idea that blackness in general, like, I think one of the things I want this show to make very clear is that for me, blackness, I am taking blackness and reclaiming it outside of this racial
Yeah,
construct, right? I see
yeah.
blackness as a political identity. And that political identity is to be able to help us unify so that we can build the economic systems that you're talking about between the Caribbean and Africa, that we can build even the alliances, like, of course, because I'm in
Wow.
tourism, I want the alliances between African Americans and the Caribbean. I want them
Look,
to value Black tourism.
I want more than just a tourism connection
Yeah.
between Black America and the and the Caribbean. I want an economic one. Like as far as I'm concerned, like this is Wakanda.
Yes.
Like help us turn this into Wakanda as far as I'm concerned. Like
Take it all back.
like no, like no, I mean like as far as I'm concerned, like look, like LeBron, Kyrie, you guys, all these guys with money in NFL and NBA, etc. Yo, invest money in projects there. Come and start projects there. Come and think. Stop letting a white guy from England or a white guy from Canada come and do it. Come here and do it. Like Mike Tyson opened up a marijuana plantation and put I think $50 million into an operation in Antigua. Like that's what we want. Like bring that. Like that's where I believe that's where I believe the diaspora really needs to go. That's where I think we need to really hit. It's outside of just a tourism point of view. I think we really need to hit on it from an economic point of view and actually we're finding ways towards creating investment funds and investment opportunities and stuff.
Respect. You know, I think one of the things that this particular election and this Kamala Harris conversation, it really exposed the lack of respect that we have for each other. And I think that this has kind of been an ongoing battle between all of us. And, you know, I experience it often because while I am adopted, I also understand that I am not of it. And I kind of go between both of these worlds and, you know, figuring out how do we heal these, I mean, between the Caribbean and the US, besides like this very kind of like, I think ill-constructed nationalism that Caribbeans have because they build this idea around this nation when really it's still a fallacy, right? Like I get it and I understand it and I don't have it. So, you know, I would love it. I get it. You know, I'm looking for passports. So, you know, anybody want to, you know, pass it on. You know, I'm ready for it. So I understand that, but like I'm curious how we heal whatever these weird things are that ail us, misconceptions about each other.
Right. Okay. So to get into that, I think most important to understand how these divisions that we think that exist between us. I think it's important for us to understand that they don't really exist and where the root of them is. I think it's really important for us to actually start having these conversations and start to understand that all of these things that we're trying to find to divide ourselves, one, don't really exist and were only created to actually keep us divided. Because you know, this white supremacist system that we still exist in very much thrives and is dependent on our continued division and us not being unified, because they understand and recognize that there is immense power in our unifying and our coming together and our actually
and we see it. We're working together. We see the synergies and it's love and it's fun and it's a sharing of culture and resources and we're able to do it with Black people. I mean, that's the fascinating thing, you know, like these things exist. So
I mean like
I want to hear
no, I mean like no, but that's exactly it. Like just our ability to how we've been able to work together as you built your company and how you asked me to come and work with you guys and you want to do it. That's the perfect example of, you know, that's just one example of it. Like it's just
I'm getting you to Africa. I can't wait for you to get to Morocco.
Oh no, I'm definitely looking forward to being in Morocco. Like you have no idea. You have no idea. I'm definitely looking forward to that. But you know, but even the ability to I think it's important for us to really understand that, because if we're able to remove those divisions and understand how we work together, then it's then better able to actually execute and do what it is that we want to be able to do in all of our businesses. I mean, like, you know, I talked about infusion catering, like like my other company, Concept Eclectic. You know, I started that with a great friend of mine, Tamara, and we've met, and you know, we started doing it. We've done a couple of different events. We have an event called off the record where we, where we're working with like local visual artists who come and turn my house into a gallery, and they do they do art live, use art live, whether it's as a group, as a collaborative group and stuff, and you get to come and enjoy and experience it. And that's just one example. One of the things we're pushing now hard is smoke, which we have coming up this weekend, which is basically like, getting into just like Texas barbecue, like just American barbecue, really well smoked
Is it
brisket.
Texas barbecue? Because I'm a Texan. Like, let's not play games.
Oh no, this is 12-hour
All right.
brisket.
I'll be there on the 12th. I challenge you. I'm gonna taste this barbecue, and I if it's not right, I'm calling all my people.
I'm not even scared. I'm not even scared.
Do you guys hear this? Because my cousins is all up on through this.
I am not even scared.
We want this to be legit.
You want brisket? You want cornbread?
I want it all.
You want all? All right, cool. I got you. I am in no way, shape, or form running. Our brisket always sells out.
All right.
I've never not sold out of brisket. No matter how much brisket I buy, I've never not sold out of brisket.
That's the Caribbean palate. Now you're gonna have a Texas palate. I'm gonna let you know one way or the other if this is legit.
Bring it.
I like the healthy arguments between us. I just want it to be more fruitful and productive. So I ask everybody this, babe, and I want to know, what is Blackness to you?
Ooh. What is Blackness to me? It's a great question. We always have this joke of, I'm going to take your black card, or, we always, talk about, all right, you know what? We're trading candy. White people, y'all can have them. We always make this joke, but Blackness for me is learning to love and appreciate the majesty that is our people, our history, our struggle, our everything. Like, we are our ability to persevere, to create, to drive, to be this cultural driving force in the world, despite everything that we've experienced, is testament to who we are, and you can't help but not be proud of that. Like, Blackness to me is understanding that, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, you're proud of it. It doesn't matter what your hair texture is, you're proud of it. It doesn't matter what your thing is, it doesn't matter any of it. It's about not letting the influences of other cultures try to make you feel bad about who you are, and embracing who it is that we are. I think that that's incredibly important for us, and that's what Blackness is. I think Blackness is truly embracing the beauty and majesty that is being a Black person in this world.
Wow. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Listen, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at like 11 years old. I was 5 years old when I saw Nelson Mandela get free from prison. My parents taught me about what it meant to be Black, about why it was right to be proud to be Black. My mother, when she was my mom went to HU. My mom was a Bison. My mom traveled to Africa with her friends. I grew up I grew up my mom cooking African dishes right next to Caribbean dishes. Mm-hmm. For me, I've always had this understanding of it. My parents made a decision after I was 5, 6 years old. We weren't going to North America anymore for vacation in summer. We were going to vacation throughout the region because it's always important for us to actually learn and understand and appreciate the different islands in the region and what that meant.
Because every one of them is so different. I mean, culturally different. I mean,
Yeah.
similarities and you know, there's a vine that kind of goes through it all, but
Yeah.
the Caribbean is a beautiful, amazing
No,
place.
I was saying like just the other day to a friend of mine, I was saying like it's not always easy here, especially these days with COVID and everything for us in our industry. But I honestly don't know if I could live anywhere else. I absolutely love living here. I
Hmm.
absolutely love living here, no matter what the struggles may be, no matter what my frustrations may be with government or the economy, how certain things function or work. I genuinely love living here. It's a fascinating place to live. It's a beautiful place to live. It's, as you said, it's textured, it's layered, it's one of those things I believe honestly everyone should experience. And as you said, every island is different. And because every island is different, it allows for a different experience every time, everywhere you go. And I think it's so important to understand that because I think when you start to really experience that, I think you start to really understand what that vine is and how that vine all connects.
And I mean, for me as an outsider, the Caribbean saved me when I had had enough. Like America had destroyed me. And
Mm,
Trayvon Martin, I mean, I came to the Caribbean. You know, I moved to
mm,
Anguilla, but I was studying in Barbados and traveling to Jamaica. And they literally Caribbean people like lifted me up and just, you know, I feel loved. And I have a litany of Caribbean people from every single one of the islands, and everybody claims me, and it's just
oh yeah.
it's one of the beauties of blackness. And I think that to me, it's I call it the middle passage and the middle ground. It's like the reverse middle passage because it allows it. I think it allowed me to get to the place to where Africa, I was ready for Africa because I
Yeah.
knew what it meant to be in a black nation. I knew what it meant to be
Mm,
engulfed in blackness in that way. And
mm,
I will always credit the Caribbean for saving my life. You know, like it really just renewed who I was. And I knew from the moment that I started, you know, going into Jamaica and studying, and that I would never be the same, and that, you know, the US was just, you know, a place for me to come and see my family and then head back out. But I am curious, and I would normally stop this interview here, but
sure.
what I hear, and I've heard this more than once, is that it was really your parents that gave you that sense of African history, that sense of Black history. Were you getting it in school? And is this the core problem?
I definitely wasn't getting it in school. Not anywhere near to the level that I was getting it at home. Yeah, I definitely do think that it's a part of the problem. I think we need to do more to actually talk about our history, what actually happened, what was condoned, what was allowed. I think that like a friend of mine, Jamal Griffith, made this interesting pointed this out to me because he's in tourism as well. He made an interesting point to me. It's like you go on a tour of a plantation house in Barbados, and never do you ever hear have or never ever are slaves or slavery mentioned in any way other than in a cursory passing. There's never here's where the slaves or here's what slaves used to live like. There's a huge slave burial ground that is discovered not far from my parents. That is not a monument or anything that should be like that's not part of tourism that we don't. So there's that part of us that we don't talk about that I think we need to start talking about more.
Because you don't
And
want
I
to make
think that
you don't want to make the white folks come into vacation have to think about the hard stuff. You know, this is why I say I think tourism can also be, if that is your main economy, can be a neo-colonialism. You know, like
yeah.
there has to be more. And I'm just so proud of what you guys are doing in Barbados. I'm happy that I'm gonna see y'all in about 2 weeks.
Well, oh wait. When are you coming in? The 12th?
The 12th. I want my barbecue.
Oh
Okay?
well, I'm gonna tell you since you're coming in on the 12th, what you
Yes.
need to do is What you need to do is get your people together. If you don't make you have to quarantine. We're doing a house party, luau. Concept is
Oh,
like this. We are doing this. Yeah, it's gonna be like an old school house
I feel like
party
we need to make some
with a
special rules for
luau
Black
theme.
folks. Like, right? Like if we come COVID free, like let us free. I mean, really. Can
What
we
I
make
would
some
say,
new rules? Can you please pass that on to me? I just let her know that we're coming. You know, T Barnes is bringing her crew. We just need
uh,
12 days, 14 days, 14 days. Just
I
let us
would just say,
free.
I would just say,
This is
bring. I would.
reparations.
I would say, like, honestly, I'd be like, yo, I got tested 7 days ago. I got tested 3 days ago. I got tested one day ago. Yo, here's my change. Test me now. See? Nothing.
Thank you so much for this
Uh,
conversation. I really appreciate it. I had so much fun.
no,
And thank you. Yeah, I what I find interesting is that not only is the diaspora watching, but a lot of my African people are watching. And I think it's important that they know our experiences as well. And I think that that's a part of the healing, all of us to understand real historical context, which we
mm-hmm.
do have something coming up. Under the T Barnes umbrella that's going to offer some real historical context so that we can start getting clearer about what we've been through, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then just continuing the healing, continue the conversation, and thank you for being a part of this.
No, you're
Um,
welcome. I mean, like, one of the things, like, I'm definitely looking forward to going to Morocco. But I mean, like, at some point in time, I figure while I'm in Africa, I'm gonna try and find a way to pop over to Ghana.
Absolutely.
Because for me, like, Africa's always been on my is on my heavily on my bucket list for a number of different regions, different countries for different reasons. But like, Ghana's one of those places that I have to go to because, like, I mean, even though I have never done a DNA test, a genealogy test, to understand and try what my full roots are, like, knowing what you know about slavery, knowing what you know about Ghana, like, there's a part of me that feels drawn that I need to go and visit.
Yeah.
I need to where I may have come from. I need to
I don't
understand.
know about your roots, but I always say, and this is a whole conversation for another day, and it probably get me in
Mm-hmm.
trouble, that Bajans are the Ghanaians. Like, absolutely, fundamentally, it is not as the actual fact. I don't
Mm.
have the complete and total proof of it, but I can
Well,
run down the
I'm
reasons why
gonna
I think that.
you know what? I'm gonna put you this way.
And
One of
Nigerians are the Jamaicans. Y'all are the same. They're the
I
same.
mean, I'll put it to you this way. The smartest, most one of the smartest men I know, my cousin's father-in-law. He's Nigerian. Um, he's Nigerian. He has a married Jamaican wife, lives in Jamaica. But he is so wise. And the first time I met him, we spoke, we were talking, he was telling me about Africa, his journey, Nigeria, everything. And he was asking me, he said to me, where are you from? I'm like, Barbados says, no, where are you from? I said to him, well, I don't know my roots. We suspect maybe Ghana, but we're not sure. And he said, I can tell by your gait, Ghanaian, definitely. I don't know what it was about how he said it for the time. It was the way he said, like, when he said, I think it was the way when he said, I can tell from your gait. Like, that's such a very specific observation
Yeah.
that someone has to take the time to actually learn and understand and see. Like, for you to be able to, that is kind of like, all right, Mr. O, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, I'm gonna give this some serious consideration and say, okay, this is more from more maybe to very possible.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching Working Towards Black today. This conversation I think is so necessary. I'm so excited about the way it's going. Thank you guys for continuing to view. The shows are getting up there in views, and I'm excited about that. Spread it, share it, let everybody know about the show. And make sure that you join the Global Movement on Facebook. The Global Movement will kind of keep you up to date with all my shenanigans, but also let you know what's happening kind of across the globe with Black folks. And it's a hub. And I hope to keep you really up to date and informed. And make sure you subscribe to Free Black Woman Magazine. It has launched and it is ready to go. And we're always looking for new writers and contributors. And we want this to be a collective voice of Black men and women from all over the world. We have new African writers, we have new Caribbean writers. So you are welcome. Just email info@freeblackwomanmagazine.com. Thank you. Thank you, Omar. Tell your mom and
Thanks.
daddy I said hi.
I will do that. Tell yours the same. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
With my
And
barbecue.
yo,
It's
I'm not even
on.
scared. Yo,
It's on.
I am not even scared. I'm not even lying to you. I am
Y'all
not
heard it
even
here
scared.
first. I'm going to record it.
Yo,
It's going to be
no, no,
live.
no. You're gonna what? IG live. I want you to IG. I want to capture that reaction on your face when you first bite into the brisket and you just realize that this is the truth, the way, and the life.
If it's not true, I'm taking Biggie back. I'm definitely taking Malcolm back. Like there's some people I'm taking back. I see Blade.
All right. Again, I am scared.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.